Let's cross the United States of America to the Sun's editor-at-large. I'd love to know what the world thinks of this. Harry Cole, a very good morning, evening, afternoon, not sure where you are, but you're looking rough and ready, kidder.
Oh, God, rough and ready with a bit of a cold, but no, stayed up to what's the by-election result, because it does have massive implications for the wider West. It has implications for everyone. This is an astonishing result. You've touched on it there in your introduction, Jeremy. Campaigning in Urdu, images, blasted around a Manchester district of Benjamin Netanyahu. What the hell has he got to do with local politics? The Greens played a very divisive card here, campaigning incredibly hard on Gaza, on global affairs, on anti-Israel stuff in one part of the constituency that has lots and lots of Muslims, and in white working class areas they were talking about the cost of living and the fact that no one can afford a holiday and more normal bread and butter British political issues. And I don't think the most startling thing for me about last night, it wasn't the result. We kind of knew where it was heading with that result. It was about 1 minute past 10 when a group called Democracy Volunteers put out an emergency release. Now, this is an academic-led group that monitor elections around the world. They've been scrutinising elections in Britain for 10 years, and they have said, and they were alarmed, they saw the most amount of family voting. This is people being led into ballot boxes and told where to put their cross. We all know what that kind of means and who's doing it, and they've said that actually, if you drill down to the data, they were at about 35 polling stations across the constituency yesterday during voting. They saw 68% of those polling stations this practice taking place. They estimate that 12% of the votes they saw cast in Manchester yesterday had influence of family influence, or people being put under duress, or people going into ballot boxes together. That's the stuff you read about from, distant faraway lands, not Britain's second city.
But the problem you've got is, and I'm going to do a four-way. I've never done this before, Harry. I want you to say that. The thing is, Harry, right, the truth is there are people saying this is outrageous. I share that outrage. I share it with you. There are other people saying this is sour grapes. Let's head back to Gorton and Denton. Let's include Samara Gill, breakfast reporter there, was live on the ground, now inside. You spoke to a Green reporter or supporter earlier. This family voting accusation that Harry's just talked about, is that being talked about this morning?
Yes, it really is, actually. Harry is completely right and on the money there, as per usual. It's a massive issue here, obviously, because of the Gorton being now included in the election. You have got a big wave of big Islamic families that vote a certain way. Now, a lot of them used to vote for Labour. Now, a lot of them vote for the Greens because of their very punchy election tactics and almost Mumdani style social media campaigns in certain different languages, everything absolutely generated in order to pick up that vote. And I'm not just accusing Muslims of doing that, but it's very interesting when you see that sort of behaviour and how that could potentially affect the next general election. I mean, even that Green supporter that I spoke to just sort of brushed it off and said, oh, but that's family, isn't it? I don't know. My family doesn't usher me into a voting booth and tell me who to vote for. This seems like sectarianism at its finest, and I think it will be a real problem in the future.
Absolutely right. Let's bring in James Price, former government advisor. James, good morning, my friend. Nice background. Can I just say that Isabel Oakeshott said earlier, and I think she's dead right, she took three things from this morning's election. One is that Labour have been hammered in a heartland seat that they've held for 100 years. I don't want to upset you, but the Conservative vote, 2%, absolutely non-existent. She might have got some traction at PMQs, but is Kemi Babe not cutting through in the country? No. And Reform, yes, some people are saying sour grapes, talking about family voting and sectarianism. That's true, though. But they held up locally, James, at 29%, which is exactly what they got nationally.
Yeah, all of those things are right. It's great to see Harry staying up, by the way, over from the States. And these wider implications for the West is bang on, because this isn't just happening in Britain. This is happening in other Western European countries now. We're seeing it happening in the United States as well. The Democrats have what they call their Michigan problem, because the people who live in Dearborn in Michigan act in exactly the same way as we've seen happening in Gorton and Denton now. I've seen it as a campaigner in the past, where you knock on a door and somebody answers it, and they'll be wearing an abaya or a hijab or something. Their English is not that great, and they say, I don't know this is for my husband, and they wander off, and the husband comes along and says, yeah, we vote Labour. And that's happened to me a lot in the past. And it's interesting to see now that that sectarian vote, that big block vote, doesn't vote Labour anymore, because the Greens have managed to weaponise, not just, again, as Harry says, pictures of Netanyahu, but the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, as well, popping up in these videos to exploit another kind of sectarian hate. Interesting to see if Labour is quite so comfortable and relaxed with all of this when it's not going their way. That'd be very interesting to see.
Completely agree, Harry. Two things. Does this get replicated, or am I off my tree? This isn't going to be happening at a general election. If I was Nigel Farage, I'd use this as the wake-up call. But what does it say about Keir Starmer, pal?
Look, I think we all know that Keir Starmer is in office but out of power. He reminds me a lot of post-2017 election Theresa May, where the country knew she was a dud, the media knew she was a dud, the MPs knew they were a dud. They sort of scramble around the House of Commons whispering day in, day out, oh, God, what do we do? How do we get rid of her? How do we get rid of him? At some point, they're going to have to strike, because if this result was replicated across the country, Labour would have gone from an historic election victory to basically a non-existent party. He's got crucial May elections, the UK midterms, as I'm trying to rebrand them, in a few weeks' time. If the Greens pull off something like this and Reform pull off something like this across those elections that Labour tried to stop even happening in vast parts of the United Kingdom, he's in for a really rough ride. I don't know when he's going to go, but his premiership is all but done. I can't see him fighting the next election. What is clear is he is, those polls that show him being a historically deeply unpopular Prime Minister are accurate. This is a seat that Labour won with 50% of the vote in 2024. They barely got half of that this time. But also, as you said to James there, it's a death of the two-party system. The Tories not even on the pitch. Combined, Labour and the Conservatives, the two parties naturally of government in this country, got less than a third of the vote. Something really interesting, something quite scary in places is happening. And if this by-election isn't a warning sign for us all to wake up and start paying attention to the complete splits across the political system, then I don't know what is.
I completely agree. And James, Isabel Oakeshott made a comment earlier which sort of sent chills down my spine. She said, if the Labour Party does not see an end to this disaster and even, replaces Starmer and still the polls don't move, do you, like her, share the fear that they might start thinking about proportional representation as a way to somehow cling hold of power?
I wouldn't put anything past Labour. Would they start giving the vote to Europeans with settled status here in the UK? Because if you're a Commonwealth citizen, you can vote in the United Kingdom, theoretically, if you apply to. You've got a sort of theoretical over 1 billion people in our sort of voting system. You're allowed to vote technically. You can just come over here. And this happened in the last general election. So you're already seeing the voting being messed around with. You're seeing votes at 16. I think that might even actually come to bite Labour on the behind again, because all these 16-year-old kids are either going to be voting Reform because they've seen Nigel Farage on TikTok if they're male, and if they're female, they'll probably be voting for the Green Party, because one of the biggest splits we're now seeing is on sex lines. We're seeing women going off to the left and men staying broadly where they are, but a little bit off to the right.
And how ironic is that the party that the winning MP comes from think that a woman can have a penis and they can't even differentiate? And Samara, can I bring that up with Samara quickly? Because one of the things that sort of came into all of this was that what the Greens... I mean, all three of you respond, right? But when I was growing up, the Greens were about trees and oceans and plastic and fish and stuff like that. Not to mention Samara Gill of anything environmental, all about Gaza. And also, so much of what the Green Party believe for would not stand up in a Muslim household. I don't get it.
It's such a good point, and it seems like the Greens are only green just by heritage at this point. I mean, you can't really pinpoint an environmental policy that they have. They've managed to galvanise this caucus of Muslim voters and young disenfranchised people and bring them together, which is a real feat, to be honest, politically, because you're right. I mean, the leader can't even define what a woman is, but you've got a very big conservative sort of vote that he's mopped up. So they've really been able to divide and conquer with their strategy here. And I think it's quite interesting to see how they've been able to do that. The Your Party, which I don't even know who the leader of that is it Zara Sultana? Is it Jeremy Corbyn? They were not able to do that so effectively. So what you have here is a real far left party that is organised, professionalised, and knows exactly where to chase a voter base. And that's something we haven't seen in a long time. The Greens have totally discarded any sort of love for the environment or net zero. That's not what they're running on now. They're running on a pro-Gaza, high taxes, crack cocaine and heroin ticket, and it seems to be working.
And isn't that shocking? Just to finish, I mean, both of you, the boys, very, very quickly. Harry, I will rail against the people who are contacting us saying, oh, my God, I can't vote anymore. This stuff needs to be called out. This is a seminal moment. If I was Nigel Farage, I would be using this to say to the British people, if this is a route that we go down, it'll happen if you don't get off your backsides and get out and vote.
Absolutely, we now need tactical voting against the Greens. They made it like a joke, dancing in the streets, led by a man who can't dance, who looks like he brushes his teeth with a hammer. But under the veneer of cringe, they want to legalise drugs. They want to mangle teenagers and allow all of that trans stuff back into the debate. You know, they're in bed with the Islamic community while also wanting to ban female-only spaces. Well, tell that to the mosque owners, and that's before we even get to them wanting to give up our nuclear deterrent, leave NATO, abolish the army, and bankrupt the country with taxes. These people are dangerous, and they must be stopped.
Can I just say, God, I've missed you, Cole. Come home. JP, HC, SG, I love you all. Thank you very much indeed.